Hey, Al McCoy here, and you are listening to the Solar Panel, the Phoenix Suns Show.
Definitely trade it. There's only a 14% chance at Zion Williamson. That means there's an 86% chance of getting a player who may not pan out. This draft is actually being talked about by the draft folks that I choose to hate if they don't like my players and love if they like my players. But it's being touted as the worst draft since 2016 and 2013. Although Zion Williamson himself is being touted as potentially the best draft picks since 2012, Anthony Davis. So you have a 14% chance of getting a great draft pick and an 86% chance of getting another Dragan Bender. I would trade.
You want me to go full Sean Kemp and go unprotected on this, huh?
The Sun, that's the important distinction, because we don't run the Suns. Who cares what we would do? Do you think the Suns would do it?
Okay, but I'm thinking about this, and maybe 2 weeks ago I would have been more inclined to, but after what Ja Morant did in the tournament and impressed and caught more attention than I expected him to, I might be a little more hesitant than I was.
You're so reactive to shiny stars.
I am, but you need a point guard, right? Now, I'm usually against trying to get a young point guard, a rookie point guard like that, because usually you're 2 years before he's really ready to lead an offense the way you need him to in terms of that. But I don't know, the way he looked, I'd be really hesitant. It depends on who the all-star is, because
so here I have a list of all-star point guards. You tell me if you would trade, if you or the Suns would trade the pick right now unprotected for any of these all-star point guards that were in, again, 2019 All-Star.
Good.
Would you do it for Kyrie Irving?
Yes.
No.
No. I wouldn't do it for Kyrie Irving either. That guy is, he is, what's the term? Like, is flimsy to the wind?
His part of the world is flat. It's okay.
He's disgruntled, I think is the word the word I'd use.
Off his rocker a little bit, yes, but he's an incredible player.
No, I wouldn't do it.
Would you or the Suns trade it for Steph Curry?
Oh, in a heartbeat. Right. I'd trade my mother for Steph Curry.
But the word even for the #1 overall pick, so that doesn't matter. Would you or the Suns do it for Kemba Walker?
No. Plus, you're not going to have an opportunity. He's going to be a free agent.
The problem with Kemba, if you could, though. But the problem with Kemba is that he is a free agent. He's going to require $30+ million a year on average across his contract. It's just, no, I don't think I'd do that.
He's a slightly better Eric Bledsoe, and I love Blood, but I wouldn't trade him.
He's a lot better than Eric Bledsoe. Kemba Walker's a stud. All right, would you or the Suns do it for Russell Westbrook?
I would. Russell has proven that he can carry a team of lesser talent in his prime, and he's still in his prime for the next 3 or 4 years, for sure.
Yeah, I think I would do it in a pretty quick heartbeat for Russell.
Kyle Lowry?
No.
Nope.
Last but not least, D'Angelo Russell.
Oh, God.
If I knew it was going to be third, yes.
Well, you don't, though.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying, though.
I really don't think I would do that, because D'Angelo Russell still has some issues with his game. He's not going to, him and Booker would give up 600 points a night. It would be crazy. And a lot of his game is predicated on him making jumpers, just like Booker. So if you've got both guys predicated on making jumpers, if they go through slumps, then your offense is totally toast.
If I felt pretty good that the league was hell-bent on getting Zion to New York, and I didn't fully believe in Ja Morant, there's 2 benefits to D'Angelo Russell. He's a billion times better than anybody you have on the roster playing point guard, and he and Devin Booker are close, which means you're going to avoid is Booker ever going to want out of Phoenix? So I think those 2 things would be enough. If I didn't feel confident it was going to wind up #1, I would make that deal.
Ooh. So that's when you're looking at it from the Suns' perspective. If you were going to trade this pick, unprotected, you would be requiring an all-star. The all-stars that they would definitely trade for, those teams ain't trading. They ain't trading Russell Westbrook. They aren't trading Steph Curry. Kimball Walker's a free agent anyway, and he's not coming.
Okay, so that's current all-star at point guard. Sure. What about, let me just throw this out. I want to hear you guys' answers. What about, and I know he's a free agent, so it's not technically possible, but what about Malcolm Brogdon?
No, I would not trade the potential #1 pick for Malcolm Brogdon.
But would
not
you trade
in a million years.
Would you trade #1 protected? So it's protected only for one.
No. You know who I'd consider trading it for? Non-point guard? Aaron Gordon. I would consider top
The
one
number one
protected for
protected,
Aaron Gordon, because you need a power forward. He has a unique skill set. I think he could play alongside
I would do that
Ayton.
too.
I think that's the kind of.
What about you? No, you're in Orlando, Tim. So tell us what you know, and would you do that trade?
Well, I'm not in Orlando. I'm in Florida.
Same difference.
It's the same difference.
Right.
Orlando's the state, Florida's the city, right?
I live in St. Augustine, Florida, the oldest city in the United States.
How far away from Orlando are you?
About 3 hours.
He lives in America's penis. That's all you need to know, and that's fine.
So having watched a lot of Aaron Gordon, he's very good. He's also very inconsistent. He's the type of player that goes on short streaks of being really productive. So he'll have a really productive, good shooting streak for about a week and a half, and then he'll kind of disappear for 3 weeks. And then he'll come back and he'll play really strong, and then he'll kind of disappear for 3 weeks. And that's sort of what you're getting out of him. I mean, he's not a bad prospect. He's not a bad player, but it is difficult to fathom trading the 3rd overall pick for an Aaron Gordon. I just think you can get more value out of it.
Okay, let's do that with CJ McCollum.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would do that for CJ McCollum.
The top 1 protected?
Yep, I'd do Zion protected for McCollum.
Zion protected, that's right.
If
you could name protect a pick, that would be awesome, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I honestly though, Aaron Gordon has had to be Mr. #1 option in Orlando. Here he could be number 3 option.
Vucevic has been the number 1.
Okay, 1B in Orlando, and here he could be the 3rd option, which probably makes it a little bit more palatable in the fact that sometimes he's inconsistent because he's not going to have to carry as much of a load. And if you start to look at that and you add a point guard in there, a veteran point guard, doesn't have to be a star, but actually somebody who could play the game, then you got something interesting that's brewing there.
But he can't really carry a team though. I mean, he lost to the old guys in the Uncle Drew movie.
Yeah. But do you really need somebody? You're acting as if I watched the Uncle Drew movie, and I think you're like one. It
was on HBO. I actually did.
But when you look at it, I'm not sure you need to, in every position you're filling, get the #1 star. You need guys that can help support Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. They can play with Kelly Oubre. He better be part of your future. I'm done acting as if he better be part of your future. So like you don't need the star. You need guys that are very good that can build around the rest of this roster. And I think Aaron Gordon's the kind of guy that is a billion times better than what you've been playing at power forward, that has tons of potential, that's athletic, that can go in there and makes you better immediately. I would certainly consider Zion protected for that.
I would do TJ Warren and a top 5 protected pick that would move on to future years if it didn't convey this year. I agree with you. Aaron Gordon's great. I just think that that's too much to give up for Aaron Gordon. And I agree with you. Those are the types of players that you need to put around Booker.
Right.
At this point, you have to take chances. You have to
take chances with mid-career guys. Now, I'm tired of taking chances with draft picks. Zion Williamson is the only, in my mind, for sure draft pick that is out there, and I would take him in a second. And the Suns, I think, would be very competitive next year just with having him. Any other draft pick, I trade it.
I wholeheartedly. Well, I can't say wholehearted. I'd have to think.
I know it depends on what you get back.
About Ja Morant.
But if it's your top 2 or 3 player, next year, and they're age 25 to 30, and they're going to be on the team for years, I would definitely trade that for any pick other than Zion Williamson.
Hey, and if the Suns hire Kevin McHale soon, he can start discussing contracts with free agents like 2 days later. Like he doesn't care about any restrictions.
The team that came out saying that they were looking for a new GM, and I'm blanking on who it was right now, but they were interviewing really
Pelicans.
It's the Pelicans
and really successful. Taking talent from really
number 2 guys,
right?
Really good franchises.
So you look at who the Suns are looking at. It's just like, come on.
Hey, don't worry.
The Suns are looking at dudes that just hang around the arena.
Right.
Don't worry. The Suns will take a number 2 in this hiring process.
So we do want to thank a listener right now, and really everybody that has decided to support the podcast, the show. So if you're watching on YouTube or if you are listening on your podcast app, in the show notes below, there's a little button that says support this podcast. You can do a $1, a $5, or a $10 option. If you do a $10 option, I will send you some Sun swag. I sent some out last week. This week, I do want to thank Nicholas Cabrera for supporting the podcast. It's really does go a long way. We appreciate it. We put a lot of work into it, and we're very happy that you find enough value out of it to even do the $1 option a month.
Nicholas, you the man now, dog. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Also,
I might be able to buy a taco next month. Thank you.
I do want to give a little bit of a shout out to everybody that did the Sun Solar Panel Fantasy League. It's pretty much wrapped up. Just to give some context, I ended up coming in 3rd in the league. I lost in the first round of the playoffs. Greg, he came in 11th out of 12.
I think that's up. I think that's up 1 spot from last year.
Hey, man, that's like Phoenix Suns.
Hey,
I think you went 55 and 124.
Hey, I like that win percentage.
Did you forget to update your lineup for people being out?
Every time after the second week of the season because my life got busy. So I'm that guy.
I do want to congratulate the two finalists, Jeff Manth and Justin 9. It does look like Jeff is going to pull out the win. I just went and checked. It's still 2 days left in the fantasy. But congratulations to you guys for a successful season. And anybody that wants to do the fantasy league with us next year, just keep listening to the podcast and we will shout that out.
Man,
now,
I wish my fantasies lasted multiple days. That's nice. 2 days left in the fantasy, huh?
You need to settle into your reality, Greg, and master that first.
This is my fantasy here, gentlemen. My reality.
I'm living out my fantasy
is outside that door.
With my best buddies.
Okay, so this is important. Devin Booker,
shut up, you fools.
Devin Booker over the last 11 games has been incredibly efficient, incredibly successful. We all know he had a string of 2 50-plus point games, one on the road, another one at home. There was a lot of national media attention. And now Dave was so kind as to send me Ben Oliver's remarks on
Golliver,
excuse me. Ben Golliver's remarks on Devin Booker, and I want to play those on the show so that we can get our reaction.
The way that the Suns are conducting themselves in these games, it's atrocious. And I think Devin Booker is already too old for this nonsense. I kind of got it when he was 20 years old, stat padding, chasing 70 points against the Boston Celtics. Okay, you're still young. Earl Watson's, not like the most legitimate, long-standing head coach, so of course he's going to chase it. Devin Booker's been in the league for years. They're putting him back into a game that they're down 30 points. They're intentionally fouling to get him the ball back against the Utah Jazz. They're encouraging him to go one-on triple teams to jack up these contested shots just to chase his number. And why are they doing it? Because they want all those tweets to go out from the Suns account saying, Devin Booker, 59. And they want all these tweets coming out from guys like me who track these historic
guys like me.
He's the youngest player to do this many points or in back-to-back games. I'm sure you saw that clip the other day where he's telling a fan, I'm going for 50, and that goes viral. How about go for a win? How about go for one stop at any point of your career? How about try do that? How about you tell a fan you're going to lock down on defense and try to hold a team under 120 points? And look, I watched the Washington Wizards in person earlier this week. They made the Lakers look like the Warriors. The Wizards are on the second night of a back-to-back. They go head-to-head against the Suns in Phoenix. Booker goes for 50. They still can't beat the Wizards. And look, I understand they've got nothing else to play for down there, but I think Igor, man, don't let this define you just like it defined Earl Watson. Don't be that. You can be better than this in the NBA. You don't have to just kind of be a caddy for Devin Booker's scoring explosions. Just treat yourself with a little bit more respect. Treat the game with a little bit more respect. I was very impressed, by the way, that Quinn Snyder even shook his hand after that game. That's how embarrassing it was from the Phoenix Suns. And that's the end of my Devin Booker Super Bloom analogy.
Oh, okay, thank God that's the end of his analogy. Give me a freaking break. Who gave the... okay, Ben Golliver, how about you do a monicum of research before you go on what is basically a verbal diarrhea rant, all right? Quinn Snyder and Igor Kokoshkov are extremely good friends. Quinn Snyder gave Igor his very first job almost 20 years ago. Of course they were going to shake hands after this game, you moron. And then he goes on this...
Every pair of coaches shakes hands after a game.
Yeah, and then he's talking about this Wizards game as if Devin Booker was trying to just jack up shots, when actually in the final 2 minutes, when that was a close game, Devin Booker was facilitating for his teammates as well. Oh, and by the way, that fan that he was talking to on the sidelines, do a little research there too. He was talking to his brother, and the cameras happened to catch him making what I assume was probably him joking around with his brother.
After the game, it was his brother.
And Devin Booker actually tweeted it too, so it wasn't that damn hard to find it, even if you don't pay attention to the Suns. It would have been one Google search for either of those facts. But that's not convenient in your narrative now, is it, Ben Golliver, when you want to just rip on the Suns? All right? And this organization is easy to rip on if you want to look at it, okay? It's not that hard to find things to genuinely get angry with this organization about, but you don't have to manufacture something to do it, right? And everybody's on Devin Booker for losing 2 games when scoring 50-plus points. You know who did it last in back-to-back games? James Harden. In a year, he finished second in MVP. Did you hear anybody bitching and moaning about that? No, you did not, all right? You know who else chases stats? Russell Westbrook did in that year that he wanted to average a triple-double for the year. Did you hear anybody complaining then? No, you really didn't. All right, you guys are looking for a convenient clickbait headline and things to get people to upset because they're not really watching this team. Stephen A. Smith pulled crap like this week as well. A lot of national writers. I think it's Andrew Sharp at SI had a whole piece about how Devin Booker's not really that good and stop trying to project him to be good. And then he did a weird thing where he's like, he's really Kyrie Irving. Well, oh, God forbid. I'd hate to have a guy be as good as Kyrie Irving. He sucks then, if that's the fact. You know, the Suns show a graphic about the 7 guys to ever score 50 in back-to-back games, and it's Michael Jordan, Wilt Chamberlain, James Harden, all these huge names, Kobe Bryant, and then Antoine Jameson's there, and everybody, of course, goes, oh, yeah, he's the next Antoine Jameson. Why do we have to discredit this kid, his hard work, his amazing scoring ability, the fact that he was doing it efficiently? It wasn't like he jacked up 80 shots in each of these games to get here. And yeah, should he have come back in the game? Maybe not against Utah. I get it that you're blown up, but right now, what do these guys have to look for? Well, what do these guys have to enjoy? It's Devin Booker and the Washington Generals around him basically right now. Who else is supposed to do anything? I have absolutely no problem with Devin Booker playing good basketball and trying to entertain a fan base that hasn't seen fun in forever.
All right, so let's talk about Ben Golliver just a little bit. Ben Golliver has originally was a Blazers Edge writer, and he got national recognition for himself, and got himself onto the national scene with CBS Sports, I believe, originally, and then now SI. He has been riding on Devin Booker's ass for years now. Before the season started in September, Golliver wrote a preview for a top 100 listing for NBA players, and he really shit all over Devin Booker then too. And he made some comments that, let's see, I put for this player, if Devin Booker played one-on-one against himself, the game would never end because he'd never get a stop. That's basically where he's at. The guy plays with freshman basketball level intensity or JV level intensity on the defensive end, and that's fine if your team is blowing other teams out by 20 points. But when you're taking 40-point losses, forget about it. I don't think people watch Suns games, he says, as if he does. If it's Suns fans who are mad, I get that because you have nothing else to cheer about if you're a Suns fan. Yeah, sure. Okay. That's fine, Ben Golliver. You can have that opinion, but you've been shitting all over Devin Booker for a year now. I reached out to Golliver in September after he wrote this preview, and he politely declined, saying his family was going on vacation for a couple of days, and then he never got back to me. I tried to get him on this podcast. Then I reached out to him yesterday and asked Ben to see if he would come on our podcast. And he said, no, I'm going to stand by my comments. Devin Booker reached out to me personally, and we hashed it out. And then I said, well, what did Booker say? And he said, I'm going to keep that just between me and Booker.
Devin Booker probably told him to go screw himself. That's probably what the conversation was.
I'm sure he did. And so Golliver isn't willing to go on radio shows and pods to talk about his opinions with people who would actually question those opinions. I actually have more respect.
I have a counter to that. He did go on the Dunked On pod with Nate Duncan.
Oh, our favorite.
After releasing that top 100 list.
Yeah, I have more respect for Nate Duncan than I do for Ben Golliver, by the way, because Nate Duncan was actually willing to come on our pod and take our punches, and he handled them as well as he could, and we handled it as well as we could, and I had a lot of respect for him then. Ben Golliver has now twice said no for coming on just a simple Little Suns podcast where if anyone listens to us, they know, yeah, we're fans, but we're also going to be respectful and fair, and you're not going to get torn apart on a podcast like this. So I have no respect for Ben Golliver if he isn't willing to go and back up his comments in a not so safe space as his own podcast where he gets to just rant.
You know what I also find interesting is I went down a rabbit hole after the Wizards game when Booker dropped 50, and I was looking at things that like guys who have had losses in 50 when scoring 50 points or more, right? Wilt Chamberlain did it 37 times in his career. 37 times he lost when he had 50 plus points. Like, and people still think he's one of the greatest players of all time. Like, put some context around this stuff. Look at what Devin Booker's doing and how, this wasn't the 70-point game where he wasn't necessarily efficient and they were doing all sorts of shady things to get him points. Like, both of these games, he was efficient. He was playing good basketball.
That quote-unquote intentional foul was committed by Jimmer Fredette, who followed up that with a shot of his own. Devin Booker didn't even get a shot on that quote-unquote stupid foul.
And Jimmer Fredette went 1 for 10 in like what felt like the final 3 minutes of that game. It wasn't like he was helping facilitate for Devin Booker in those situations either.
Booker even set him up for 2 of those shots.
Yeah, but why would we have context when you can see a box score and actually just go on a rant without knowing what really happened?
That's the problem. These guys saw 59 and 33, and that's all they needed to see. 2 numbers. Booker scored 59 and a 33-point loss. However, Booker was only a minus 13 in that in 41 minutes, which it's obviously bad, but that's not as bad as the minus 20 the rest of his team was in the 7 minutes that he didn't play. Right. And then
that makes you a positive 7 or something on the court.
Right, a net plus 7. Right, and then in the next game he was actually on the scoreboard, a plus 8, I believe, in that loss, where they lost by 3 to the Wizards.
Well, and then did you hear Steven Jackson's rant on the jump about Devin Booker? He rips Booker. This was following, I think it was following the 50-point game, but he was talking about the Utah game. And he goes, yeah, well, DeAndre Ayton had 30 in it too. So he didn't even know what actually happened. He didn't know that DeAndre Ayton had 9 points. Nobody else had double figures in that game. Like, they couldn't even look at the box score right and do research. That's what's driving me nuts about this. stay in your lane. At least watch highlights and understand something. Put some context around it. Take 5 seconds to research any of the things that you're looking at. And we're not perfect here. I say stupid stuff all the time. I don't deny that. But if I screw up, you know what? I pay up. I admit it. I come on here and say, oops, I didn't know that. I got it wrong. Or oops, I lost that bet. I'm going to dress like Jonah Hill and look like a moron on the internet. I do those things. But you know what? Some of these other flamethrowers don't do that crap because you got to have humility to be able to do that and admit you're wrong.
So I do. There was more than one person talking about the Suns. So I do want to give some credit where credit is due to a couple of other national pundits, whatever you want to call them. Zach Lowe on Devin Booker. As I've said many times before, including last week, I am a Booker optimist. He is not a losing player. He's a stud on offense, and he's going to be a star once the Suns put a real team around him. Jalen Rose. Devin Booker is NBA's best player who isn't an all-star or on an all-NBA team.
Yeah, there are some positive takes, but what's more fun for these guys is to have a negative take based on no research, just because there is a running commentary. So, and there is a legitimate running commentary that Devin Booker has not carried his team to more wins than you would otherwise expect. And if you go back through NBA history, there is almost no precedent for how bad this Suns team has been around a scorer and distributor the likes of Devin Booker. There's been no case in history. Now, we can make all the excuses we want to make. We can say terrible coach. He's had 4 coaches in 4 years. We can say that the team has been terrible around him. They've gone totally young. They've had disgruntled mid-career veterans. They've had all these things go against them. They've had injuries, which they have every year. I don't think T.J. Warren's played over 60 games in a year. So they all these things have conspired to make the Suns bad for 4 straight years with Devin Booker as the last 3 of which he's been the primary scorer. There's been almost no case in the entire NBA history that matches this year after year after year of ineptitude. So the question has to be, is it the organization? Is it Booker? Or is it just the teammates around him haven't lived up to their potential, what they were supposed to be when they were put on the team?
Well, blaming Devin Booker is like blaming a child for his parents getting divorced. All right?
It is always the kid's fault. Sorry, kids.
Oh, yeah. I have no experience, so I defer to those with experience.
The Royal Tenenbaums. Any of you guys see that movie? Okay,
thank you for derailing this point. I appreciate it. Go on, Roland Tannenbaum.
Gene Hackman played a really bad dad from a divorced marriage, and one of the kids, he sat the adult kids around a table at one point. He wanted to come back in their lives. It turned out just to take more money from them. And one of the kids asked, "Dad, are we the problem? Are we the reason you guys got divorced?" And he just kind of paused, looks at him, he goes, "Well, it didn't help."
Gwyneth Paltrow was one of the kids, right?
And
Wilson or Owen Wilson.
Wilson brothers actually were both in there.
All right, so back to the point.
Don't blame the kids for the divorce.
Yeah, it's like blaming a child for a divorce. Devin Booker has had 4 head coaches in 4 years, 2 general managers, and outside of 3/4 of a season, full season with Eric Bledsoe, he's had G League level point guards, right? Plus a large amount of injuries that he's dealt with. But all of this is Devin Booker's fault somehow. How I don't understand how that can be the case. And he's playing for what has been over the last 4 years the most dysfunctional franchise in the NBA. And you can try to argue me on that point. You can say the Knicks, this or that. No, it's been the Suns. There's not been more dysfunction in an organization over the last 4 years than the Phoenix Suns. But Devin Booker is supposed to be able to overcome all that and take a roster that is nobody would think is that good. Nobody would likely think is playoff worthy. That has not had any veterans that are quote unquote veterans that are in their prime. It's been guys at the end of their career or rookies or second, third year players, right? for a majority of what he's had. And when you look at it this year, when he was playing alongside guys that were in those mid-20s that are pretty good NBA players, and Tyler Johnson and Kelly Oubre, hey, guess what? They went on a run there. But it's still all Devin Booker's fault.
So
Devin Booker's supposed to fix all this.
Dave had done some research that he put a lot of work into this, so I want to get to that. So Devin Booker among top 5 fourth-year scoring guards of all time. He is in the company of Kobe Bryant in his 4th year, 22.5 points. James Harden, 25.9. Dwayne Wade, 27.8. Devin Booker, 26.5. And Allen Iverson, 28.4. That's what those guards did in their 4th years. But Dave put a lot of work comparing some really high-level NBA talent and what they were able to do on their teams, whether or not those teams converted over to winning records and that kind of thing. Dave, you want to take it?
Sure. So I put a question out on Twitter yesterday so people could help me start my research. I wanted to take a look at just because there is a running argument and it's got a lot of merit that Devin Booker can't win, and a guy that as good as Devin Booker shouldn't be on a team this bad. That a guy as good as Devin Booker, as we think Devin Booker is, which is a starter on a playoff caliber team, if not a deep playoff team, is there any precedent in history to where a guy at that caliber of player has been on such a bad team for so many years in a row? So I did some research. I asked folks on Twitter. You guys were awesome. Thank you so much for your responses. I got about 30 responses of players who have done more that with less or the same as Booker, so as proof that Booker should be doing more with this team, because Booker really hasn't carried this team to any wins. Let's be straight about that. Devin Booker has not carried this team to a series of wins over a course of a few weeks or anything like that. He's had some game winners. He's had some very good games, but he hasn't himself grabbed everybody and dragged them along and put wins on the scoreboard if it was any more than the last second shot. He's had about half a dozen of those. So have there been other stars who've done it? And there were a lot of great names thrown out. So here's some of the research I did. And what I did is I looked at just, first of all, I focused most of my effort on guys who were in their first 4 years in the league. So some of these great stars in their first 4 years, because you have to give some credence to the fact that Devin Booker has not been on a winning team. So he doesn't know what a winning team looks like. And he's young. He's very early in his career. So to compare him to a mid-career Kobe Bryant, who carried a bad Lakers team after having won a few championships, you can't do that. You can't compare Devin Booker to Dominique Wilkins. You cannot, because Dominique Wilkins was carrying bad teams in the middle of his career. Kevin Garnett always had better players or just as good of players around him when he was young in his career. And then he just carried teams when he was in the middle of his career. So you really can't. James Harden, even his 4th year, people saying he had a bad team around him when they won 45 games his first year in Houston. Yeah, but he knew what winning looked like from coming from Oklahoma, and he had a functional coach and a roster of mid-career veterans around him, where he was the only really young guy. Him and Chandler Parsons were the only really young guys. So I think you cannot compare Devin Booker to a mid-career guy who carried a team to a few more wins, like in the 30s or 40s, than Booker's done. So having said that, and that's my qualifier. My qualifier is I'm only looking at early career guys. And feel free, Tim and Greg, to jump in at any point, because I shared this work with you, if you want to have a different take on these situations or just want to add feedback. I don't need to be the only one talking here.
I'm going to add feedback on the Kevin Love when you get there, because I was a big fan of the Timberwolves run, so I want to add some context to it.
Absolutely. So I think I'm just going to start top down and go through each of my situations. So several fans put out Allen Iverson as a good example of a young guard who carried a terrible team to a better record. And that's absolutely true. Allen Iverson, in his first 3 years in the league, his first year, he went 22-60 as a rookie. The guys around him were 22-year-old Jerry Stackhouse, 29-year-old Derek Coleman, and 26-year-old Clarence Weatherspoon with a coach in Johnny Davis. And they won 22 games, comparable to Devin Booker.
Which Stackhouse, Coleman, and Weatherspoon are more more experienced talent than Devin Booker's ever had on his roster, you know?
So that's a good point. But Allen Iverson was only a rookie, so he wasn't really making a difference on wins as a rookie. You really can't do that. His next year, he went 31-51. But his coach was Larry Brown, one of the best coaches in the history of the NBA, and still had Jerry Stackhouse and Derek Coleman around him for a second year in a row. Plus, they added Jim Jackson and one of the best defensive players in the league throughout his career, Theo Ratliff. And the only reason they only won 31 games is that most of those top players were injured a lot that season, or they were traded for each other. But they only played between 20 and 60 games apiece around Allen Iverson. So they only won 31 games. Then they started making the playoffs. They were 28-22 in 1998 during that strike year, and then they started winning 50 games after that. So Allen Iverson had the benefit of a Hall of Fame coach, a really good defense around him, and a team that was built to win with him as the head of that snake. Any questions? Anyone think Devin Booker should have done as much as Allen Iverson in getting his team to the playoffs?
No, keep going.
Okay. Elton Brand is another case. Elton Brand was a guy who was on a lot of levels, not so different from Devin Booker because he put up 20 and 10s right away, and he was on losing teams. And in fact, he got traded before his third year because the Bulls didn't think he was the cornerstone that they wanted for the rest of his career. They won 17 games his first year and 15 games his second year, as he was growing into a number one option at 20 and 10. But again, people thought that was a little empty because he didn't play much defense. He was earthbound and all that. But even then, he had guys like Tony Kukoc, late career Tony Kukoc after his Bulls championships, Ron Mercer, Ron Artest, Metta World Peace, later named as, for you youngins who might not remember there being a Ron Artest. And so they really struggled, and they actually traded Elton Brand to the Clippers, who then Elton Brand had an okay debut season, but then they dropped right back down to 27-55. And Elton Brand, for the rest of his career, was considered a nice secondary, tertiary option on a team, even though he put up 20s and 10s, because he just wasn't a difference maker. So how similar do you guys think Elton Brand is to Devin Booker's career?
I don't know. I mean, you want to be honest, I think Ayton might be closer to Elton Brand than Booker in the long run. A guy that puts up double doubles, but is a third option, and I think Ayton might be closer to Brand than Booker ever will be.
Okay. All right. So then, yeah, that's a good point. So but Elton Brand, that's another case where a guy, just because he was putting up all those points, if you don't put players around him and you don't put a good coach, whose coach was Tim Floyd until he finally got Alvin Gentry leading him. If you don't put a good coach with him in a good system, you're not going to win games.
Well, and he was in two dysfunctional situations, and in the Bulls while he was there, and then the Clippers as well. So It's all about, in large part, about the situation you find yourself in too.
I got a bunch of responses to compare Devin Booker to LeBron James. I don't think that's fair at all. LeBron James is one of the greatest players in the history of the NBA. I will concede that Devin Booker is not going to have LeBron James's career. How about you guys?
Yeah, in a heartbeat, I'll concede that.
Yeah, it's like he's not Michael Jordan, you know. Okay.
Who's another one I actually did the research on? Michael Jordan. And I will concede that Michael Jordan did more with about the same level of talent, if not, but he still had players around him, and he had a good coach his third and fourth years in Doug Collins.
We will concede Devin Booker is not LeBron James or Michael Jordan. Yes.
Okay, so we'll all concede that, right? Okay.
Yes.
How about let's compare him now to Anthony Davis's early career. And first of all, before we even go any further, I don't think Devin Booker's as good as Anthony Davis. What about you guys?
No, he might be able to work his way into the same level if you're putting guys in levels, but he's not going to be Anthony Davis either. Anthony Davis is arguably one of the top 5 players in the league, and Devin Booker can be a top 15 player.
But Anthony Davis had more help and better coaches around him than Devin Booker has had. So I already concede that Davis is a better player. I'm not trying to say Devin Booker is as good. But Davis barely did better. Barely. His win totals with the Pelicans, 27, 34, 45, then 30, then 34, then 48, then 32. It's been a terrible career. And that's why Anthony Davis is insisting on being traded, because they've had 7 years to put teams around him that can win consistently, and they haven't. What the Pelicans have done is they've cashed in. They've paid restricted free agents who are early in their primes, tried to help them grow around Anthony Davis and help carry Anthony Davis to more wins, and it's worked marginally in that they're better than 20-year-olds as far as contributing to winning. Guys like Eric Gordon, Ryan Anderson, Tyreek Evans, Drew Holiday, who, by the way, is an all-star and an all-NBA defender when he's healthy. They have had better top-end talent around Anthony Davis than Devin Booker's ever had.
And he's had 2 head coaches and 1 general manager in those 7 years. So a GM that could have 1 consistent plan, 2 head coaches, both of which are well respected around the league, that had systems when they came in. Devin Booker has not been afforded that luxury at all.
And even with a player that is better than Devin Booker, with better talent around him, if I remember correctly, he was only able to get that Pelicans team into the playoffs, once or twice? If it was twice,
yeah, they only did it the 2 times,
and
maybe once actually. I don't think they made it when they were 45. Shoot, I didn't look that up. Sorry, guys.
So if they did get in twice, and I do think that they got in twice. 1 year, it was trying to remember the context around it. There was an injury from another team. Like a major injury on another team. They ended up sliding it to the 8th spot.
Yeah, they snuck in.
Yeah, they snuck in.
I remember now.
Then he did get the team 1 more year into the playoffs, and that was the team with Rondo. That was when Tyreek Evans was having a career year. That was when they had Mirotic, yada, 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 and they did sweep the Portland Trailblazers. But even after all that, with a top 3 talent in the NBA, arguably, with better players around him, he could still only do it twice, and one of those times was pretty much sheer luck.
Right, so he was saddled with a dysfunctional franchise and not enough star players around him to win in the Western Conference. This is the modern day Western Conference. Some of these other players, like a Dominique Wilkins and guys like that, they were playing in a different era where there weren't open tankings and teams were fairly consistent year over year on their rosters and things like that.
The talent level was spaced a little bit better. You didn't have teams like the Warriors with 3 or 4 all-stars. A lot of teams had 1 guy.
Right. So while the East had been back in the day was the tougher conference, it wasn't quite we didn't have the three stars on a team and running roughshod through the conferences and stuff.
The tanking is a great point, though. Everybody looks at this cumulative record and just goes, well, Devin Booker just has been a part of some of the worst teams we've ever seen, without taking into the context that for one of these seasons, the Suns legitimately shut down everybody. Like, just went, it's February. We're just going to shut everybody down. That team probably could have gotten a 30 stratosphere of wins. That's not great, but it's a lot better than in the 19 and 20, 25 wins that this team has been around.
Yeah. So let's go to some what I would consider comparable stars on bad teams, not even quite as successful as Anthony Davis, who has been so unsuccessful he now wants out of New Orleans. So you've got a Kevin Love. Okay, so Kevin Love came in and he was immediately, another 20 and 10. Hold on, guys.
Dave's dying. We apologize.
Yeah, sorry, I'm doing too much talking too early in the morning, maybe. So Kevin Love came in and was immediately a 20 and 10 player, and the advanced stats nerds loved him because he was also a good high post passer, and his rebounding numbers and all that. He did all the things that actually go into those counting stats, like the BPMs and the RIPMs and all those things, or PIPMs. I mean, and all those things that actually that the stats nerds love. And I used to be a stats nerd, so I don't dislike you guys for sure. And I've gotten a whole IT background, so I love that. But in the NBA, sometimes there's guys who just fill up the right stats to look good on the stats sheets, and some guys who don't, but they're still a great player. Kevin Love was treated as a star with the Wolves. What were his win totals his first 4 years? 24 wins as a rookie, where he wasn't even he was like third or fourth on the team in scoring. Then 15 wins, then 17 wins, then finally up to 26 wins when he got a good coach in Rick Edelman, and he got Nikola Pekovic, who actually at the time was a difference maker at center, Luke Ridnour, who was a mid-career point guard who actually could run the show a little bit. And then and JJ Barea coming off the bench, who we all know. I don't know if casual fans know this, but JJ Barea has always been a difference maker to winning teams. He actually helped a lot of teams win a lot of games, including this current year Dallas Mavericks team, when Luka Doncic was getting credit for a lot of Dallas wins early in the year. It was actually JJ Barea, who was about one of the best guys coming off the bench this past year, in his late 30s now. And now, since JJ Barea went down with an injury for the season, the Mavs have lost almost every game since. So there are guys who contribute to winning. And so they only won 26 out of 40, and then 26 and 40 when they went in that strike shortened season. Then 31 and 51, and then 40 and 42, and then finally traded Kevin Love in the big LeBron James summer. So Kevin Love is a good example of a star on a really bad team. 24, 15, 17, and 26 wins in a 4-year stretch, when his best teammates were Al Jefferson, Michael Beasley, and Nikola Pekovic. And you know what? Kevin Love couldn't lead them to wins. And then he ended up being a third best player on a 3-time finals team.
Context around the two seasons in which he was 31 and 51 and then 40 and 42. And to your point, Pekovic was an amazing not an amazing center. Let me tone that down. He was a difference-making center who was really, really good before he suffered some injuries and eventually had to retire. And that's what happened with Pekovic right there. Kevin Martin, he was a 20-point-a-night efficient shooting guard. Ricky Rubio coming into his own in that. To your point, JJ Barea, Buttinger, who was a little bit better. The issue with those teams was the on-off numbers between the starters and the benches, specifically in that last season where they went around 500. And it wasn't Kevin Love. It was every time they brought the bench in, they shit the tank. And that's why there weren't more wins. But even to your point, Dave, with really good players around him in the Eastern Conference, good players in the starting unit and a terrible bench, he could still hardly get up to a 500 record.
Look, Kevin Love is a great comparison here. He had 5 coaches in his first 4 years. He had a general manager that made some questionable decisions, and questionable is being kind to Kahn, but that whiffed on draft
David
picks.
Kahn.
Yeah. He could have had Steph Curry with him, and instead he got Flynn and Rubio. Like there's a lot of comparisons
in his 15-win
situation.
season. His the third leading scorer on the team was Johnny Flynn with 13.5, and then the next year Johnny Flynn was at the end of their bench.
And I mean, if you look at it, I'd be perfectly fine with Devin Booker having a Kevin Love type career without the trading him so he can actually go be on a winner portion.
As soon as he was put around winners, he wasn't. Look, Kevin Love didn't turn out to be all NBA on an NBA Finals team for sure, but some of that was due to injuries that he was suffering in his Cavaliers years, and some of that was due to LeBron James and him taking up a lot of the same space on the floor, and so they weren't utilizing him as very best they possibly could. But still, Kevin Love was the third best player on a 3-time NBA Finals team, and that is the low point basically of his star career.
Yeah, but everybody thinks Devin Booker sucks. So
Yeah. So, okay. So now let's go to another good comp actually throughout history to the dysfunction that Devin Booker has been suffering with and what it could do to somebody's career long term. How many of you remember Anton Jameson as one of the best scorers in the game? Right. So that's the problem is Anton Jameson was a 20 to 22 to 26 point scorer in his early years with the Golden State Warriors when Chris Cohen was the owner, and I remember Golden State of Mind, especially those guys when he was still the owner, even later and all the way up until the Steph Curry years. They just hated that guy, and he always created dysfunctional teams. So let's take a look at Anton Jameson's early career. I'm not going to count his rookie year because he was like Devin Booker, barely coming off the bench, and then finally got a starring role toward the end of the year. So that first year doesn't really count as far as did that player impact the win total. Okay, Anton Jameson, year 2, 19 wins. His coach, PJ Carlesimo, got fired midseason. Gary St. Jean, their general manager, took over the team. The other leading scorers on the team were 21-year-old Larry Hughes, 32-year-old Mookie Blaylock. At least they had a point guard. 30-year-old Chris Mills. At least they had a mid-career kind of guy who could score in the lineup, although he was one-dimensional. But they had a lot of injuries that year, and they won only 19 games. Carlesimo was fired. The next year they won 17 games with Dave Cowens as the coach, who only coached them for 1 year, with Danny Fortson and Larry Hughes as Anton Jameson's other henchmen, basically scoring wise. And they had a lot of injuries as well in trades. And then 21 wins. Cowens got fired mid-season, replaced by Brian Winters. That was when Jason Richardson came on the scene and Larry Hughes was still around, with Fortson as well. And then Gilbert Arenas became the pre-Gilbert Arenas rule guy, where he was a second-round pick who suddenly turned into a star. And then finally, they won 38 games in Anton Jameson's 5th year, with Eric Musselman as their coach, who could coach them how to play at least respectable defense, and Gilbert Arenas blossoming into the Gilbert Arenas rule kind of guy. So when Anton Jameson got better players around him, he had better results on the court. When he had awful 20-year-old players around him, or at least non-winning 20-year-old players around him, he couldn't win games. So that's actually really comparable to Devin Booker's early career. What do you guys think?
Well, you want to know the difference between Anton Jameson and Devin Booker? Anton Jameson, in those 4 years, he was 23, 24, 25, and 26. All right?
He was older.
Devin Booker is doing this, and he's 22 right now, right? He started as the youngest player in the league.
Like Ben Golliver saying, God, he's been in the league for years now. He shouldn't be doing this anymore. He's still just 22. He's younger than Anton Jameson ever was in the NBA. He has
not hit the age that Anton Jameson started in this comparison. So that's the difference here to me, is he's doing this at an extremely young age. He's gotten better every year for the most part. He's expanded his game in different ways. I mean, people are ignoring the fact that, and I get it, he's been used more as a point guard this year, but his assists are way up this year too. He looks good in that role, in distributing some as well, which is a convenient thing to forget in all of this as well, while claiming he's just a scorer.
Over his last 11 games, Devin Booker, 35 points, 5 assists, 7 rebounds. Actually, I think I have that backwards. 35, 7, and 5, with 1.2 steals on 49%, 35% from 3, 87% from the line, giving him a true shooting of 61.5% and 54% effective field goal percentage. Coming up on the end of the episode, you guys happen to want to end with Kelly Oubre trademarking Valley Boys, or Jimmer Fredette getting benched at his first Suns home game, which I'm assuming is...
I want to talk about Kelly Oubre.
Speed round. Let's do both.
Okay, you can do both. Quick takes. So I think Kelly Oubre, I loved it. He had a press conference this week. There's a requirement in NBA contracts that you have to meet with the media within a week of a serious injury. So he had to hit that deadline. So the team decided to have him do a press conference on the night his former team was in town. So the room was full of beat writers from Washington, as well as from his early days with the Wizards, as well as the Suns beat writers as well. And it was a fun press conference. He showed a lot of love for the old Wizards fans. He showed even more love for the Suns franchise and the chance he got in Phoenix to expand his game and play the way he knows how to play best. He really loves being with the Suns, and he talked several times about next year. He does not want to go anywhere, and I really hope he doesn't go anywhere, because he is a spirit that this team needs, that he connected with Booker, he connected with Ayton, he connected with Josh Jackson. Those guys really feel good about each other, and he talked about that. He said, I feel right on this team. And
you got to love that. And the fact that he trademarked Valley Boys means that he is kind of invested in it, and he's a smart businessman, which I like as well. He's thinking larger picture with it as well. He's the kind of guy that you want to build around, and it's refreshing to hear a guy that wants to be here long term, and that is helping make fun nicknames with these guys. That there's a commitment with what he's doing. I applaud that, and I applaud the way that he discussed with the media as well. I mean, he could have come in and just done okay, I'll answer a few questions about the injury, but he's not that kind of guy, and that's what you like about Kelly Oubre. And the only thing that upsets me about the whole situation is now that it's trademarked, we can't get in on some of that sweet Valley Boys merchandise and steal some money off that.
He is working on the trademarks for it until they come out. He's probably also working on making sure he has a contract, because you don't want to spend a lot of money putting out some merchandise and then you're not on the team anymore. So we probably won't see the Valley Boys stuff until July, but it'll be all ready to go, and it'll all be trademarked, and Kelly Oubre is going to make a little bit of side cash on that.
Kelly, if you need somebody to help you sell that gear, we're here to help. We connect with 50 or 60 Suns fans every week, and we're happy to try to get 2 or 3 sales for your Valley Boys merchandise. We're here for you. Can we talk Jimmer now for a second, please? How ridiculous. Of course he was benched. He deserved to be benched. You know, I'm glad Igor didn't give in to we have to play Jimmer Fredette because he's going to draw a crowd, and instead said, screw you for taking 10 shots and going 1 for 10 and not letting Devin Booker shoot at the end of that game when he could have had 65, 70 points again. So, damn Jimmer Fredette.
I want to make one more parting comment about Ben Golliver's rant. His little diatribe, his little vomit of the mouth. Ben Golliver actually in that rant, in the middle of that rant, somehow found a way to make it seem like the Suns had ruined Earl Watson's career. Earl Watson is the worst coach the NBA has ever seen. And yet somehow Ben Golliver is saying, don't let the Suns ruin your career like they did to Earl Watson. And when he talked about Booker playing for Watson, he said, and Watson isn't the longest tenured coach in the NBA. I don't know what Ben Golliver was smoking.
Well, he wasn't even blaming the Suns. He was saying, don't let Devin Booker turn you into Earl Watson. Right. As if Devin Booker was the reason that Earl Watson was crappy at coaching. Maybe it was the fact that he had no experience, and he just basically stole a job out from under Jeff Hornacek and was put there to do that.
Okay, if you had to pick a coach, would you rather have Lindsey Hunter or Earl Watson?
Oh, I'd take Earl Watson.
I'd rather get kicked in the nuts by an elephant than have either of those guys as my head coach.
Oh, okay. No. Earl, I would take Earl for sure, because at least he didn't piss everybody off like all the players and stuff too.
You remember his post conference, his post game conferences where he'd just be talking about the players loving each other.
I also remember what he would do when they started losing a lot is Earl Watson would actually get combative in post game conferences, and the Suns employees and media and I still laugh about the fact that one time I asked Earl after a loss to the Jazz, and I was giving him an opportunity because Earl had been with the Jazz in the past, and so had some kind of connection still. I was giving Earl an opportunity to say some positive things about Joe Ingles. And I said, what I thought a fairly obvious question I asked. I said, Joe Ingles doesn't look the part of an NBA superstar, but against the Suns, he's been playing like one. He's been playing great. What can you say about Joe Ingles' impact on the game? And Earl goes, what do you mean he doesn't look like an NBA superstar? And just stared me down. And everybody got really uncomfortable because he was trying to make it a racist thing. He was trying to make it like I'm saying just because he's a white guy, he can't play basketball. And I said, no, he just doesn't jump as high as some of the NBA stars. He doesn't move as fast as some of the NBA stars. He doesn't have all that innate athleticism. What he does have is he has skills. He knows how to play the game. And Earl just goes, yeah, what does that even mean? Doesn't look the part. Doesn't even look, physically doesn't look the part. And it was the most uncomfortable press conference to where even years later, we're all still laughing about it.
Look, and the thing with Earl Watson, really nice guy. But I actually, even though I wouldn't want him as my coach, he still got screwed in the Suns situation, the way it went down, the way the exit and how that happened. And maybe someday I'll get into that further, but that was they even did him dirty, no matter what you thought of him as a coach. So dysfunction all around for everybody. You get some dysfunction, and you get some dysfunction, and you get some dysfunction.
All right, guys. Well, it was fun. I did enjoy the episode last week as well, by the way. It was kind of cool because I got to just listen as a listener instead of having to be the person that's editing. And shout out to Dave for sending me the audio to edit at 9:30 at night on a Sunday.
Yeah. Sorry about that, man.
Hey, where's your dedication? You don't even show up for the episode, and then you decide, hey, I'm not going to edit this shit till Tuesday.
Yeah. Super. When I got, you know what I actually thought happened?
I put myself under the bus, but Tim, you're under there with me, man.
I was like, man, they gave me the week off from editing too. That was so nice of them to do that for me. Greg just sat there, he edited the episode so I didn't have to, and gave me a week off. I really appreciated it. And then I saw the audio come through at 9:30 at night on Sunday, and I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me.
That was Dave. That was not me. I had nothing to do with that. I know,
because Greg didn't do a damn thing. That's what. Don't even blame. That was Dave and not me. You're right, because you didn't do anything.
I showed up and I dressed like Jonah Hill, and that's all you're gonna get out of me. And that's when I'm repaying a bet for you.
What did happen to Justin? What did show up? He needed to wear some pink curtains, I believe.
Yeah, I know. I never got back to Justin. We had a lot to talk about with the Ben Golliver thing, so I decided we'd focus on that, just the three of us, and then Devin Booker's 2 50-point games this week. So next week, hopefully, we'll bring Justin on, and he'll pay off his part of the bet where the Suns actually won more games than he thought they would the rest of the year, and he's just going to be showing off his pink curtains on his bod.
Fun stuff. All right, guys. Well, we will talk to you next week.